As her parents' 10th child, Hildegard was dedicated to the church as a tithe when she was 8 years old. At age 16, she officially took the veil and entered the convent of Disi-Bodenberg, near Bingen, Germany, as a Benedictine nun. Hildegard was elected abbess of the convent in 1136, and it was around this time that the visions she had experienced since she was a young child began to intensify and were clearly revealed to her as interpretations of the scriptures. And it came to pass in the 1141st year of the incarnation of Jesus Christ, Son of God, when I was 42 years and 7 months old, that the heavens were opened and a blinding light of exceptional brilliance flowed through my entire brain, wrote Hildegard in the preface of her first major visionary work, Civius. And so it kindled my whole heart and breast like a flame, not burning but warming. And suddenly I understood the meaning of the expositions of the books, that is to say, of the Psalter, the Evangelists and other Catholic books of the Old and New Testaments. Not long after this vision, Hildegard received a more specific communication from God, encouraging her to take up the pen. O fragile one, ash of ash and corruption of corruption, say and write what you see and hear. And just so there was no mistaking the command, this particular vision was repeated 3 more times to Hildegard on 3 separate occasions. Initially, she resisted, and you can imagine why. God seemed to be instructing Hildegard to do what virtually no other woman was doing at the time. As a woman and a nun living during a time in which most women were illiterate and certainly not encouraged to write or preach, she was terrified and overwhelmed by the directive. Hildegard did her best to ignore God's command, until finally he made it impossible for her to do so any longer. She succumbed to illness, an illness she believed was a direct result of her disobedience. Although I heard and saw these things, because of doubt and a low opinion of myself, and because of the diverse sayings of men, I refused for a long time the call to write, not out of stubbornness, but out of humility, until weighed down by the scourge of God, I fell onto a bed of sickness. Hildegard overcame 2 major obstacles in order to produce the great volume of writing for which she is remembered. First, there was the fact of her gender, a significant barrier. Second, was the extent of her education. Male theologians in the 12th century benefited from years of a classical education, including a practical and theoretical understanding of Latin, as well as music, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, theology, and sometimes even law and medicine. Although she learned to read and write in German and Latin, Hildegard's education was rudimentary at best. As biographer Sabina Flanagan writes, "For someone to write on theology who lacked such a background and was also a woman was a bold step indeed." Yet try as she might to ignore the call to write, she couldn't suppress God's persistent command. Finally, desperate and ill, Hildegard reached out to her friend and confidant, Bernard, the abbot of Clairvaux, for advice.